welcome to the training video on abuse that will help all service agency staff understand the key concepts regarding abuse training for individuals with developmental disabilities. This video will review the quality assurance measures requirements regarding abuse training for persons with developmental disabilities, key skills they require to report abuse, tips on talking to parents, and a video of how to train a group of persons with developmental disabilities. Regulation 29910 requires all service agencies to provide education and awareness building on abuse prevention and reporting to persons with developmental disabilities receiving services and supports from the service agency. Training must be in a language and manner that is appropriate to the capacity of the person and provided every year thereafter. When an individual with a developmental disability first comes in for service, they and their family need to be informed about the agency's policy on abuse. For some persons, this may be as simple as giving them a copy of your policy, written in plain language, or the information provided to them verbally. Informing a person with a developmental disability is the first step to increasing their awareness and understanding to report. The second step is to educate and build the skills to recognize, prevent, and report abuse. For some persons with developmental disabilities, the family or someone acting on their behalf may have questions about the abuse training. We have included tips on how to speak to the family or persons acting on their behalf about the issues of abuse. Finally, we will demonstrate how to conduct a class on abuse training for persons with developmental disabilities. What are the key messages a person with a developmental disability needs to hear about your abuse policies? In plain language, these are: the agency has a zero tolerance on abuse. That means we all agree that abuse is wrong, needs to stop, and we are going to do things to make sure that everyone is safe. We want you to be safe. All abuse is wrong. Abuse is when someone hurts you, makes you do things that hurt you or are not safe, takes things away from you that belong to you, or say things to you that make you feel bad about yourself. If someone does this, we want you to tell us. They are wrong to do it. Telling us or someone else you trust, like your parents. Hurting another person is against the law. The police need to be told. We tell the police so that everyone will be safe. You can call the police, or we will call for you. It's tempting to think that abuse prevention training is simply training about abuse awareness building and prevention. However, it is much more complex than that. Knowing what abuse is and how to report abuse is the basic message of the training. The ability to report abuse is something else entirely. We know, for example, that in general, people with developmental disabilities are over-acquiescent. This fact alone makes the use of leading questions problematic. It means that people with developmental disabilities are more likely to simply agree to anything said to them than most other groups of people. This often comes from the time that compliance training was a regular part of service provision to people with developmental disabilities. The old way of compliance training is now an obstacle to self-determination, choice, and exercising of options. Compliance training often had as a goal statement, "Will do what they are told within 40 seconds of being asked." Many of you will have had the experience of frustration when asking someone with a developmental disability to make a choice or to give some direction, only to find him or her desperately trying to figure out what they were supposed to say to please you. This is an indicator of how frightened some people with developmental disabilities are of their own authentic voice, and how much they want to adapt so that they only voice things that please us as care providers. Abuse prevention training aims at giving both knowledge and skills in a variety of different areas that together combine to create someone who understands voice and choice, who can recognize and report abuse, who understands boundaries and violation. To make this change and make the new training a success, the following skills within key areas are important considerations in the training of individuals with developmental disabilities. All the new skills link together as a skill set to become abuse prevention training. You will note that some of these overlap, which makes sense because most of our skills are knitted together seamlessly as one skill flows into another. Teaching individuals with developmental disabilities about boundaries. People with developmental disabilities often have difficulty understanding boundaries, as they're used to having many people come into their space. It is easy for the offender to prepare the person with a developmental disability for abuse by using, for example, close-up hugs or resting hands on thighs when talking. These are actions that paid caregivers should never do. Learning that staff are only staff and not friends or family can be painful learning, but imperative if we are to establish that staff have a different set of boundaries than those with whom they have real intimacy. Having policies in place about boundaries and training individuals with developmental disabilities in the knowledge that paid care providers only touch you in a limited way is the first step to recognizing when someone crosses the line. Learning to report boundary violations rather than abuse is a huge step in preventing abuse. Abuse reporting means, well, reporting. Most abuse involves some kind of threat. Threat isn't always about violence. I will hurt you if you tell. Threat is also about other kinds of hurt. I won't like you anymore. I won't give you special gifts. And I won't take you to special places anymore. Whenever threats get combined with a lifetime of compliance training, this means an outcome of too many individuals with developmental disabilities simply allowing the abuse to continue. Over time, a person with a developmental disability learns that there will be some kind of hurtful consequence to telling. Teaching assertiveness so that individuals with developmental disabilities know how to speak up will improve their lives in so many ways. It will allow people to determine their own direction and give their lives real meaning. The benefits to assertion training are many. In the context of abuse prevention training, assertion means removing control from an abuser and taking control of your life. When we say that we need to encourage reporting, really notice that the word courage is a major part of that concept. Moving on to rights training and self-advocacy. These days, we're trending towards more and more agencies thinking and talking about the rights of people with disabilities. In fact, the regulations require all agencies to have a Bill of Rights for persons with developmental disabilities. However, an agency having a rights process or a Bill of Rights is meaningless if people with developmental disabilities don't know about it, or if they know about it but don't know how to use and exercise those rights. Misunderstandings are commonplace. Some agencies mistake an exercise of rights for neglect of agency responsibilities. Therefore, it's important that training about rights and responsibilities of adult citizens needs to be in place. Above all, everyone has a right to be safe, but everyone also needs to report abuse because one has a responsibility towards the safety of others. Rights training and the establishment of self-advocacy groups give people the opportunity to learn about the rights they have as service recipients and the responsibilities they have as adults. This combination of understanding not only radically reduces abuse, but it also radically changes service delivery. Abuse is, almost 100% of the time, a relationship phenomena. It occurs where one person misuses the power granted by relationship over another. Learning about healthy relationships, about healthy friendships, about the difference between friends and staff, as discussed earlier in boundaries training, is important. It is a sad thing to note that many people with developmental disabilities are so lonely and so desperate for friendship or even simple human contact that they fear loss of closeness so much that abuse seems a little price to pay. Training in how to form real relationships, learning to respect the relationships they have with others with developmental disabilities, learning how to initiate contact and communication with desired others, takes the power that loneliness grants to abusers. Often, people with developmental disabilities are seen to be less competent than they are because they do not have the language with which to report abuse. Words like vulva, penis, vagina, testicles, and anus are wildly important if one wants to report an experience of abuse. Not only do people need to be taught the right words, they need to be taught that it is okay to say them. These words may be so linked with sex, and many may have lived in sex-negative environments, that they can't say the words because they are dirty words, that they will get in trouble for saying them. Sex educators of people with developmental disabilities often report that in simply teaching body parts, they get a lot of resistance and huge discomfort, as if even teaching is wrong. Providing information about sexual health to persons with developmental disabilities is a requirement of Regulation 299/10. Having the right language, the skill, and the opportunity to engage in healthy relationships will prevent abuse. Many people are in error when thinking that non-compliance is problem behavior. Rather, practicing non-compliance is a skill. Knowing how and when to non-comply keeps us safe in so many different ways. Tragic outcomes happen when non-compliance isn't enforced. For example, in a small Ontario town, some teenagers threw coins into the street and instructed people with developmental disabilities from a workshop to run into the street to get the coins. In a small Ontario city, a young man with a developmental disability was dared, with considerable peer pressure, to grab the breast of a popular female student. Both situations ended in tragedy. The individuals didn't want to do what they were told, but did not know how to say no. Learning skills like assertion and self-advocacy alongside other training would have helped. But to prevent the tragic outcomes, specific training in how to appropriately say no would have been incredibly useful. Saying no to staff and to parents takes considerably more skill. Many resort to saying no through tantrums and other behaviors because adult reasonable behaviors don't work as effectively. We say no means no, but most often in the experience of people with disabilities, no means force. If I say no, I'll be forced anyways. The new Regulation 299/10 has the potential as a powerful tool for change. When staff know how, when, and to whom to report abuse, the whole system becomes safer. But what is also important is for persons with disabilities learn what the regulation means in their lives. It means that they can expect education. It means that they can expect a statement of rights. It means they can expect individual planning that reflects their needs and interests. It means that they can expect to be the master of their destinies in their individual support plan. They need to know that service agencies are regulated by a set of rules and principles, and these rules and principles will be followed. Remember, their experience thus far hasn't been encouraging regarding abuse and abuse reporting, but things have changed, and they need to know that. Some parents may be very concerned regarding the requirement for mandatory training in abuse awareness building and prevention. This is understandable because the training speaks to the vulnerability of the person with a developmental disability and abuse. One parent commented, "It's like I'm thinking that if we talk about it, it will happen." These fears are to be taken seriously. Here are some hints when talking to parents. Focus the discussion on the intent of the training and regulation, and not that the training is mandatory. That will simply lead to an unproductive discussion. It's important that parents understand that the purpose of the training is to increase the skills of the person with a developmental disability so that they will be safe when receiving services and supports and in the community. Parents may say that no one can be there 24 hours a day to ensure their son or daughter's safety, or the only way their son or daughter will be safe is if someone is there 24 hours a day. Both statements are not quite true. Their son or daughter can, given the opportunity to learn skills, be on guard against abuse all the time. Let the parents preview the training if they'd like, not as a means of asking them for their approval or for their permission, but for their own education. They will see that the training is upbeat, fun, and very centered on skills. They may fear that the training will be all about sex. However, they will discover that the training is much broader than that and aims at teaching skills about safety in a variety of different situations. Inform parents that abuse awareness building and prevention training is part of a larger and more extensive change. The quality assurance measures requirements for abuse will focus on individual rights to create a much safer system. It's also important for parents to understand that changes, along with the requirements of abuse awareness building and prevention training, is a result of the Ministry of Community and Social Services listening to the concerns of self-advocacy groups. Individuals with disabilities have independently advocated for the right to be safe in their homes and the right to be educated about abuse. Now, they've been heard. We will now view persons with developmental disabilities being taught abuse awareness, building, and prevention.
All right, so there are things that we say yes to and there are things that we say no to. And that's really what this is about here today. Today, here, everyone's valuable.
This recording presents ideas about how to say no effectively in a variety of situations. The video makes it very clear that abuse training has an impact and makes a distinction between purposeful abuse and accidental hurt. Recognizing that many who take the class have been victimized in the past, the class begins by setting ground rules such as role plays and other opportunities for participation.
I want a staff to treat me as if I am more gentle with me.
Okay, you want the staff to be gentle with you, and you're right.
Follow us and we'll get you through this.
Absolutely. Everybody will work together.
Hey, Angie, what did David say in that class this morning?
Now, hold on. Should Angie tell Joe right, what David said here today?
No.
No. Why not?
Because it's private.
Because it's private.
In these role plays, concepts about respectful treatment, the right to disagreement, and the right to safety are developed. During this time, it is intended for the group to come together and the class to begin to feel like a safe place to talk about abuse.
So what are some things that make you mad?
When people make fun of people, makes me mad.
Oh, when people make fun or bully people? You're right, that makes me mad too. Say
When
again?
other people call the people names.
When other people call names?
Bad names like retard.
Yeah, I hate that, yeah.
Okay.
Stuff like that.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
I've been put into a position too as well because I've been picked a lot. Yeah.
You've been picked on a lot?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm like an easy target.
Recognizing that saying no doesn't always work, the video and the class presents several options for participants when they are in situations that warrant intervention. The message that people with developmental disabilities have the right to speak up, the right to be heard, is made clear.
I am unique. There is only one me.
No!
Back off. Leave me alone. Give yourselves a hug again. I will take care of myself. Who's the expert in how you feel? Who is? I didn't hear you.
It is also made clear that if people they report to don't listen, then they have options that they can take. The class is designed for maximum learning opportunities. There are role plays, video presentations, group games, all which cover the same material in different ways. This ensures that the various learning styles and the need for repetition of material are met. The class is set up to be full of fun and laughter, even when dealing with serious issues. It is not intended to scare people, but to give them the opportunity to learn and practice skills. A curriculum of the class and video resources used can be found on the Quality Assurance Measures web portal. Thank you.